Good afternoon, everyone. This is Beth Collins, where you are at the Lunchbox webinar series, and today we're going to have a wonderful session on procurement with the Culinary and Nutrition Services team from Minneapolis Public Schools. I just need to check on something real quick here, and then we will get started. So, all right. I wasn't sure I had the right session up there. So we're going to run through some introductions and give you some instructions on asking questions and things, the basic housekeeping. I'm Beth Collins. I'm the Director of Operations at the Chef Ann Foundation, and today in running the program, we have Curtis Rosado, who's our programs manager, and Emily Miller, who's the marketing manager. And I don't have a picture for Emily Gallivan, who's the newest member of our team. She's our programs associate. And our guests today are the Culinary and Nutrition Services, a few of the team members. We actually have three of them that are live with us today: Bertrand Weber, who's the director, Ann Ferrara, who's the menu planner, and Andrea Northup, who's the farm to school coordinator. And Laura's in the picture, but she's not on the line today. For our webinar today, I wanted to give you our rundown on asking questions. We're going to run this session for about 30 to 35 minutes, and we'll allow, could run a little over, but we want to make sure we allow plenty of time for questions. We will have Curry and Emily will be tracking the questions, and we'd really like to encourage you to type questions in when you think of them, or if something comes to mind, because if we end up with a lag at the end while people start typing questions, it's just easier to sort through them if you type them as we go. And when we get to the Q&A part, Emily's going to actually type the question that's being asked, or answered, I should say. I'll read the question out, and the Minneapolis team will answer. But Emily's going to type that question out in the chat, on the chat line, so you can read it. Lots of people like to read the questions as they're being read. And if you have, when you're typing your question, you would type it into there's a Q&A sidebar, and so you make sure you have that Q&A. And when you there's a selection that says all panelists, you want to make sure it says all panelists before you send it, so that those guys see it, and they'll manage it. If you have any technical issues during the session, you lose sound or something, go ahead and type that into the Q&A, and the team will try to address it. And I think that's it on that stuff. I'm going to go ahead here. Just wanted to tell you a little bit about the Chef Ann Foundation. It's formerly known as the Food Family Farming Foundation. It was founded by Chef Ann Cooper in 2009. We're based in Boulder, Colorado, and our main thing is helping schools take action and making sure kids have access to real food every day. We try to do that through education and tools, and our Lunchbox is our primary platform for providing access to resources for school districts. If you haven't been there, we're going to encourage you to go there later on today. And I'm going to pass the ball over to Bertrand, and he's going to kick it off.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate. Welcome, everybody. We're excited to share some of our best practice of what we do within Minneapolis Public Schools. So we're going to go through 4 areas, a little background and history of Minneapolis Public Schools and how they went from no kitchen to cooking to pre-pack to process and now back to scratch. Roles and responsibilities. We have the opportunity, and we're somewhat feel very fortunate that we can have people assigned to roles and responsibilities, but whether you have a person in a particular role, all of these responsibilities when we're talking about procurement and menu planning need to be addressed. So it might be one person that addresses all of them. In our case, we're fortunate to have one person in each area of responsibility. Talk about our procurement guideline, what we use within our department, and finish with, obviously, all of the work and effort that takes up front will help facilitate menu planning. So a little quick background on Minneapolis Public School. You can see we have about 35,000 students. We serve 39,000 meals. We currently have 72 sites. In 2012, all 72 sites were not using kitchens and we're not cooking. We are currently up to 31 sites where we do scratch and modified scratch. Unfortunately, we're still very saddened that we still have 41 without kitchens, but we were able to install 47 sites with salad bars. So even sites that don't have kitchen, we can really deliver some wonderful fresh fruits and vegetables. The Nutrition Center was actually built in 1975 because most schools in Minneapolis did not have kitchens. Students went home. So the school board decided to actually build a central kitchen as the most economical way of providing food for school. At the time it was built, it was state-of-the-art. They were baking, they were butchering, they were processing fresh vegetables. By the year 2000, the Nutrition Center had morphed into a factory and not a single piece of fresh food came through the door. Everything that came through the door of the Nutrition Center was processed, repackaged, and sent out to schools. Within 1 year of its opening, the community was outraged that we would send pre-pack to our schools. I'm just saying that because I think it's funny that it took from 1976 until 2012 to actually respond to the need of the community, and hopefully we're better at listening to our customers now than we were in the past. This is the front. This is our current model. We have a central kitchen that prepares fresh food and makes our pre-pack for the schools that do not have kitchen, which we call satellite schools. So we have some K-8 schools, satellites, that are completely pre-packed. We have some K-8 sites that are pre-packed but have salad bars. Our middle schools are currently all cooking on site, and our high schools also are all cooking on site. The central kitchen also prepares kits to be sent to the schools, as well as sauces, salad dressings, soups, salads, bulk salad, grain salad, legume salad, and then we have our True Food Express salads that are all made here. Yes, this is a beautiful pre-packed site where all of the food, although it has a lot of integrity in the food that's inside the container, but this is what it looks. And now we have switched to actually cooking on site. This is a very simple roasted chicken that we use in all of our schools. A lot of work goes into transitioning from processed to fresh. as a lot more training needs to take place. The infrastructure has to change. Your labor will shift. Obviously, your labor will increase. However, with the introduction of a lot of fresh food, your actual food costs will go down in proportion to your labor. And a very important part that we found is as you start switching from processed or pre-packed to fresh food, a lot of marketing needs to go along with that, because unfortunately a lot of our students are so conditioned to what they see on TV or hear by the media about the processed food that they might not recognize fresh food. However, the effort, I think, is really paying off, and you can see from those smiling faces that I don't think they have a problem with some of the wonderful fresh food that we're offering them. Roles and responsibility. Here I'm having a feast with one of our farmers, but really my role from a procurement perspective is to keep reminding everyone our overall goal and vision, to keep moving forward, to keep reminding everyone to balance every decisions we make so as to not focus strictly on price, but look at the integrity of the food and to push ourselves to think outside the box when we're looking at quality products. Our buyer then takes all of that and goes to work on looking for those products and works with our registered dietitian, our farm-to-school coordinator, our menu planner, our chef in sourcing those products. Every product that we bring in goes through a pretty tight checklist to make sure it follows a nutrition guideline and nutrition philosophy. And our menu planner then works with our culinary team in coordinating approximately 12 different types of menus, and to make sure that they all work in conjunction with the production that's being done at the central kitchen, that works with our farm-to-school produce that are coming in, and then works on production records and make sure that all the recipes are tied in to the menu. And then Andrea is our farm-to-school coordinator, and her role in procurement is actually quite large as she sources all of our local produce, works directly with farmer, works with our produce company on specifications, in addition to a lot of other roles and responsibility, including special event and taste tests that we do within our schools. So procurement guideline, one thing that to us is very important is we always look at balance and value and combining food integrity and value. So when we look at this plate as an example, we have frozen peas and brown rice that could be commodities. We have fresh broccoli, fresh carrots, and diced jalapeno on top of the pineapple that are all local food, so that's part farm to fresh. We have a fresh fruit, and we have chicken that could either be coming from a commodity source or from a commercial source. So I think it's important that we don't focus strictly on cost, but that we understand the balance and value and incorporate food integrity in all of your procurement decisions. USDA Foods is a great asset that we have in schools. There's many different ways of USDA foods to be delivered. We prefer the USDA food, what used to be known as the brown box commodities, that has been rebranded USDA food, over the commercially available products that are then provide you with a rebate or a net of invoice, because the USDA food offers you much more flexibility in using raw ingredients. It's also important to focus that USDA food is not free. It has a real value attached to it, and it's important that that is viewed in your procurement process. Canned goods commercially are about 25% more than the value in USDA food, and therefore are a great product to use because you get a lot more bang for your buck. On the other hand, you have some products where commercially you can purchase for less than the value in USDA, and I would say that's not the way to go. An example of some really good new food that have been introduced in USDA is, for example, is a chicken unflavored, all-natural chicken strip that was developed by School Food Focus. That would be something wonderful that can be used in recipes and add a lot of values to your food. I'm going to pass it on to Andrea now.
Another example of balance in our procurement methods is our Fresh Fruit and Veggie Snack Program. We have a program this year called Try It Tuesday, where we feature a more unique item that tends to be more expensive once a week, leaving the rest of the week available for more conventional or cheaper options that balance out the overall cost of our Fresh Fruit and Veggie program produce. This here is a slide of the selection criteria we use when looking at individually wrapped fruits and veggies. You'll notice in column A there, under each item, we have quality, variety, local foods, customer service, and reliability. And all of those either add points or subtract points from the original bid price that we got from the vendor. So yeah, again, it's not all price-based, but it's a variety of factors that go into our purchasing decisions. The second procurement guideline that we wanted to talk about was taking advantage of seasonality in our fresh foods. It's cold in Minnesota. I like to use this picture because we work with our farmers to extend the season as long as we can. Here's them harvesting some kale for us in December. We always start out our menu planning and procurement process looking at what's growing around here. This poster is in all of our school sites and by many of our desks, and we refer to it to remember what's growing around here as we're planning. We take those items available seasonally and we put them into a farm-to-school fresh produce RFP. We send out to the farmers information about every item we're looking for the next school year in time for them to plant those items for us on their farms through a contracting process. This allows the farmers to know in advance what they're growing for us and that they'll have a market, so it saves them money and energy marketing their products. It also allows us to do more advanced planning and fit those products in where we want to take full advantage of what's seasonally available. We also have a lot of conversations with our farmers about food safety and about the whole farm-to-school process, but also about where their foods end up in the end. Here's us taking our farmers to our produce company and to a school lunchroom. When they see where their food goes, when they see the slicing and dicing and chopping that happens to it, they can get a little more creative about how they can save us money on their farm and find more efficiencies and give us, let's say, seconds or larger products that saves us time and energy to process in the end. Here's where we get a little more specific about those product specifications. Again, to find us value and to find efficiencies on the farm. Taking the utmost advantage of the products that we serve. We take the information farmers give us about what they want to receive for their product per pound, and we kind of crunch the numbers. We realize that with farm-to-school and seasonal produce, you have a time during the beginning of the school year, so September, October, November, December, where we're using a ton of fresh stuff, a ton of seasonally available produce items, and the costs might seem high in our produce category. But then, towards the end of the school year, we shift to more frozen or commodity fruits and vegetables to balance out that initial cost. One way that we procure fresh produce is actually through our Garden to Cafeteria program. So students and community members grow awesome fresh produce on school grounds and deliver those to our lunchrooms. So not only is this a cost-effective procurement method, but it's also a really important educational piece, not only for students, but also for our lunchroom staff. And it gets them jazzed about working with more fresh produce items. I'm going to pass the ball back to Bertrand here to talk about how good communication with our vendors can actually lead to more value in our procurement process.
So it's not only good communication, but it's also having a communication and not being intimidated to talking to small producers, small manufacturers, and farmers. Here's an example of a turkey farmer 30 miles south of the Twin Cities who raises all his turkeys without the use of antibiotics. They are fully free range, and I mean free range. They're out there in pasture. And he sells a lot of turkey to top-end stores and co-ops. But by having a conversation with him, I found out that even though he has a wonderful market for his turkey breast and Thanksgiving, he has no market for the dark meat. No one wants to buy his thigh meat and his leg. So we actually built a partnership, and now our students are able to get a free-range turkey burger. We have an old-fashioned skin-on hot dog. We have ground turkey. So our kids win. He wins because he's got a guaranteed source to sell his dark meat, and we get fresh turkey at a substantial saving over what even commodity beef would be. Similar example for butternut. One of our farmers, because we were talking to them, we found out that a lot of their harvest comes in the size of 30, 40-pound butternut. Well, she sells to local co-op, but there's not too many families that can actually cook a 30-pound butternut for dinner, or they would need a big family. So we source, and we tell her, we'll take all your oversized butternut. Again, kids win because now we have an organic product. She wins because she has a market for her oversized product, and we win because we get a great price for it. Here she is showing off her product with some of our kids giving her a thumbs up for a roasted butternut. We had the same experience with a chicken product. Had a conversation with, we were looking for a chicken raised without the use of antibiotic. There's a product in local stores called Smart Chicken. It's extremely expensive, but we had a conversation with them because I wanted to find out if if they'd be interested in working with schools. Come to find out, same as the turkey, everybody wants the chicken breast, but no one's really interested in the thigh and the leg. Well, guess what? Our kids love thighs and legs. So now all of our fresh chicken is sourced from Smart Chicken at a portion of what it would cost otherwise. And actually, and again, that's a win-win for everybody. Menu planning, I'm going to pass it on to Anne, who's going to wrap up the session with her session on menu planning and how all that we talked up to now kind of merges into what she does.
So, hi everyone. So I'm the lucky person who gets to take all of this that you've heard about and organize it into actual menus that we produce. Bertrand said that there were 12 menus that I worked with. I'll actually tell you that there's 13, not 12. But they vary by the different sites. We have a couple of different types of high school sites. We have middle schools. We have K-8s that cook on site. We have a site that needs a halal menu. We have some grade level combos, different types of breakfast, that sort of thing. In addition, we have a few menus here that I don't even deal with, that other people deal with. We have special diets. menus, and those are written by our dietitian, and our extended meals coordinator takes care of planning the CACFP dinner and snack menus and the summer meals for schools and for parks. So there's quite a bit going on there. In addition to getting the true food into our menus and meeting meal pattern requirements, I also have to consider bringing together many other elements such as nutrition center production capabilities and schedules, individual kitchen and staff capabilities, and product ordering and delivery schedules are just a couple of the things. So kind of the way that I start getting this organized is through menu cycles. We take the school year and divide it into 2 seasonal menu cycles, and then within each one of these seasonal menu cycles, we divide it up into a 4-week menu cycle. So I like the idea of that because it just mirrors the 4-week month in the calendar. It provides a really good framework for everyone involved in the process, so we can refer to different cycles, different weeks, and everybody involved knows what you're talking about. Another reason that the 4-week menu cycle is nice is because it limits your menus to 20. So I decided I kind of wanted to focus on 20 quality menus rather than having a large number of menus. So when I plan the menu cycle, my priority is to incorporate the true food items that have been procured, whether it be with a new recipe that our chef has come up, or that I have, given a new recipe idea that I've given to the chef and he's come up with a new recipe, or reworking an old recipe that we already have to use a new, better product that has been procured. For each different menu that I have, all those 13 menus, I set it up into a menu grid like you see here. This grid that I use also calculates food cost, and it also calculates meal pattern requirements. So when I look at the 4-week cycle, I can quickly check, where I am with cost, and if I need to, plant a protein somewhere or a grain somewhere or whatever, it will calculate that. So that's very helpful. As much as possible, I try to align all of our menus at the different sites to serve the same food on the same days, but that doesn't always happen. So once I get all the entrees placed in there, then each month, I work about 6 weeks in advance of the month. I meet up with Andrea, who you heard from about the farm to school information, and we go over what will be available for the upcoming months for farm to school produce, for local produce, even affordable fresh conventional produce. And then I take all that information that I get from her and I place it, match it with an appropriate entree. So you'll see like a little example here is we have green beans over here. I have a little farm to school symbol here. That's for this particular month we'll do it, but sometimes it will have to be a frozen vegetable instead if it's not in season, if it's too expensive, things like that. Here we're using our farm to school potatoes here. If they weren't available, then then that would be possibly something different. This is a couple of different platforms we use to expose kids to the farm to school items and the fresh local produce that we get. We always put it on the regular menu as much as we can. We also do a marketed, feature sometimes on our salad bars, and we'll also do like a trial run with maybe something that's a little more expensive or something that kids aren't quite so familiar with. And we'll do it maybe at 2 or 3 schools, different grade levels or something, just to see how it goes, and then take that feedback and consider it for the future. Another thing I work with Andrea on is once a month, on the first Thursday of the month, we run a Minnesota Thursday menu. So all of the menu items are produced or grown locally. So she takes all of her procurement knowledge and local knowledge, and lets me know what's available, and we put it into this special menu once a month. We've been doing it for 2 full years, year and a half maybe, and the kids are really starting to recognize what it is, look forward to it. Our graphics department does a great job promoting it with posters and so forth. So I work with Andrea on that menu, and that menu changes each month. Okay, so then once I get the menu set with Andrea, then I meet with the executive chef, the production manager, the distribution manager, and the dietitian to review all the menus and recipes and make sure that everything works from all of their viewpoints. So that usually ends up in a whole bunch of changes that I go back and make, and once I clear all that, then I'm off to the graphics department where I get the beautiful menu published, and that's pretty much about it. Oh, no, there's one more thing. Then after that is set, right before the site start ordering their food for the menu cycle, I take all those menus and enter them into our NutriKids program so that the coordinators out at the sites can print working menus for themselves, production records, shopping lists, and that's about it. So I'm going to pass it back to Bertrand now.
So we want to, again, thank you all for participating today. And one thing I wanted to, again, reiterate, when we look at procurement, it's more than just procuring the most cost-effective or the cheapest product. It's always keeping in mind balancing food integrity, value, and understanding that the weighted average of what we serve is eventually what will be your food cost at the end of the year. So processed food is more expensive than fresh food. We also know that there are some menu items that are processed that kids love versus some really quality fresh food. Keep that in mind also when you do menus, because that can really make an impact on your food costs. But if nothing else, is always looking at the food integrity, the value, keeping in mind that we're doing this for our kids, and thinking differently. Just because a distributor doesn't have it doesn't mean that you can't find it. And I'll go back to the turkey example, where you get incredible product just by thinking differently. So with that, I thank you, and I believe we're going to start some of the Q&A session, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This is a really great session. I want to remind everyone that the recording of this session will be posted up on the lunchbox. We have a big section on procurement that addresses some of the issues we're talking about today, and we are collaborating with Minneapolis on our USDA grant that we'll be working on for the next couple of years, getting some of the farm-to-school-based recipes up on our recipe part of our website. We really encourage you to visit the lunchbox and to register when you do visit the lunchbox. So I'm just doing my plug there before we go to questions. We've got some great questions here. So I'm just going to go right down the list here. First one is, how do you market the fresh options to the students? Is any class time spent educating the students and introducing them to these possible unknown ingredients?
So I'll touch base on two briefly. Andrea will explain a little bit what we do for taste tests, because those have been very, very, very successful. Our philosophy in Minneapolis is to really focus on good food, not so much healthy food, but on good food, and on really thinking of ourselves as a restaurant, or thinking of ourselves how you see food when you walk into a beautiful grocery store. So the way we market to students is really in how we present our food to them. Our salad bars really speaks for themselves, and the food itself attracts the students. We don't have a particular person that actually goes in the classroom. What we do is we do provide nutrition information and some classroom lessons that are available for download for teachers and others to use, but we don't personally do it. But our big focus, I would say, is on the presentation of the food, including how we have sample plates and so on and so forth. And the taste test is one of the best ways that we've been able to introduce new flavors to students.
Yeah, our taste tests focus less on whether a student likes or dislikes a dish and more about just encouraging a positive tasting environment where trying something new and experiencing a flavor in itself is what we're going for. Another thing is we really count on partners to do that in classroom education. For example, when we are doing our bean salad on the salad bar, I might send an extra bag of bean salad to a school, and Midwest Food Connection, a nonprofit in the area, is doing their bean lesson about Minnesota beans in the classroom. They'll do some sampling with students right there in the classroom. So we really count on those partners who are in the classroom, who are out in the garden with kids, to tie in the lessons they're doing there with what's actually happening in the lunchroom.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's excellent.
We also just had a tour of high school students here right before this call, touring our nutrition center, learning about the food we serve. So that's another way we make students aware of some of the big picture changes that are happening.
And you guys also have some of your local chefs that come into the schools as well for your tasting events, don't you?
Thanks for reminding us. We formed a group that's called the True Food Chefs Council, which consists of about 20 restaurants, not all 100% active, but there's still 20 restaurants involved. We have a core group of about 10, and they're involved in the school themselves when we do taste tests. So they actually come in, and it's a 3-day period, and they're assigned to specific schools. Some restaurant comes with 5 up to 10 of their employees to help promote new food. So it's involving the community and getting the local foodies to embrace what we're doing, so that I think parents and students see it as collaborative work, as opposed to sometime restaurant maybe putting down school food. We're all working together as a community to promote healthy food to our kids.
Awesome. Let's move on to the next question. I'm curious about those gigantic butternut squashes also. This question is, how and where do you get foods like butternut squash and turkey meat processed? In other words, turkey made into hot dogs, squash cut into cubes.
So I'll address the protein. I'll let Andrea talk about the butternut. The protein, our turkey farmer does a little bit of, he has some of his meat already processed, so he had a small processor do some of the work for him. He has like a smoked turkey breast. He was doing some breakfast turkey sauce, Italian turkey sausage, and those kind of things. So when we worked with him on what we needed, he worked with his processor. But we are also currently expanding and looking to work directly with some manufacturers on developing recipes, and then we'll be able to divert some of his turkey and also some ground chicken to make products for us. But again, it's just doing research to find who are some of those small to mid-sized manufacturers where our volume is big enough, but yet they're small enough that they're flexible to make some of those products for us.
In terms of the butternut squash, you're right. We do get it processed into cubes at our produce company. So our produce company acts as a central drop-off point for our farmers. And then either they then deliver whole cases of produce to our cooking sites, or they'll process and deliver produce items like, let's say, matchstick carrots or butternut squash. We're fortunate to have quite a few facilities here in the Twin Cities that do that fresh cut produce processing. So there's some good competition, there's some good options. So it's certainly not available everywhere.
Great. We see that in other cities too. Probably a little tougher in your more rural areas. Got a couple questions on sharing materials, which is I pretty much expected. The question is, yes. The answer is yes.
Yes.
They answered the question. I'll say, and you actually have a repository to share on the lunchbox, which is where we like to share our partners' information up on our procurement tools area. The question is, would you share a sample of the farm to school RFP? And the other question is, and that you said yes, so we'll work on that and get a copy of the RFP, and we'll post it to the procurement tools and resources section on the lunchbox.
Beth, I also just want to add that there's a lot of resource on our website that people can access as well.
Great. Yeah, actually, I was looking at your website. You have a lot of stuff.
You could also follow us on Twitter, or as Bertrand likes to call it, Tweeter. It's at MPS_TrueFood, and we try and share some of the fun stuff we're up to there as well.
And actually, right now, the Farm to School RFP is posted, so you can download it from the website. I was actually looking at it yesterday.
Got it.
But we will, for eternity's sake, put a copy of it up on the lunchbox. The other question, which I know we have part of this up on the lunchbox, is does Minneapolis have a written procurement plan, procedures, and code of conduct you would be, and if so, would you be willing to share a copy? We have your nutrition standards up on the lunchbox.
You know, we, in terms of procurement, we also have a procurement department at Minneapolis Public Schools, so a lot of our, something like the RFP was actually tweaked from the standard contract or the standard RFP language of the district, using some of the tools and resources that USDA has made available for incorporating geographic preference and you know, legally looking for local products without breaking any rules. You know, we also have some internal flow charts when it comes to our procurement processes. But, you know, we've been through a time of transition in the past 4 years and are really just now hitting our stride in terms of defining our policies and practices.
Yeah, one thing that Andrea and I were just talking about this recently with regards to these RFPs, and it is really common for districts to work with both their procurement department, then kind of tweak the language. But one of the great resources we have available is the USDA Farm to School, and I know Minneapolis, and I've been working with Boulder. We sent our RFP off to Christine Cannell of the USDA, and she's just very fabulously will read through it and gave us some suggestions, and particularly when you're working with really trying to zero in on particular needs, because every district's different, you know, as far as what you might need, how things might need to be packaged, and how you might need the product broken down and those types of things. And the USDA has been really great in that regard. Got several more questions. I want to keep going here. This one is, what do farms and ranchers ask when you approach them about products for your schools?
That's a good question. You know, usually they ask how much, how frequent are the deliveries, and what can you pay? I mean, the same things that they would ask any buyer. Fortunately, we try and have the answers to those questions ready for farmers. I'm trying to think back to our Q&A session that we just had in December. A lot of farmers ask if they have to be GAP certified, which we've kind of developed another alternative food safety situation for farmers where we've partnered with the University of Minnesota, so they can work with us even if they're not GAP certified. Another question I get a lot is, do they have to be certified organic? And because we're able to visit and get to know every farmer, we don't require them to be certified organic. We just like to know that they have a commitment to growing food sustainably, and maybe they haven't gotten their organic certification. Those are probably the biggest ones we get.
Okay. We have a comment here. I want to let you know that you're doing a fantastic job, and it's very impressive, and I agree with that. It's a great session. Another question is, how much resistance, if any, did you encounter from the school when you began working with them, and how did that relationship begin?
You kind of cut out there for just a minute, Beth. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. The question is, how much resistance, if any, did you encounter from the school staff and administration when you began working with them, and how did that relationship begin?
So I'll address the two because I think they're two separate. When we started the shift, which we called it Rethinking Minneapolis School Lunch, which was basically, I used a template from the Center for Eco-Literacy, one of their documents that's called Rethinking School Lunch, and adapted it to our district. So we called it Rethinking Minneapolis Lunch. The administration was extremely positive from the very beginning, just because unfortunately, food service in Minneapolis had always been not well received by the community, and the administration, it was more of a, that's just the way it is. The administration had never expected anything different until I told them we could do something different. So the administration, I think, was extremely receptive. The internal staff was excited but scared. There was a little bit of resistance at first from understanding, having a clear picture of what it was we were going to do. We had to spend quite a bit of time in explaining why we were doing it and the benefit to our students. We still had, and we still have some resistance in not maybe wanting to train up, because their experience was completely different than the experience they're currently having, and we had growing pains. But overall, we now even have staff that feel that their job means a lot more than in the past, because they're very proud of what they're serving. I was just at a school this week touring, and again, the coordinator there, who's appears to be one of the grouchiest lady you've ever met, although she's got really a heart of gold. But she kept telling me that this was probably the best thing we ever did, and she was so happy and so proud. And she showed me her roasted potatoes that came from a local farm. And so that, by having a change in the food and really the emphasis on fresh food, if you provide them with the tool and the resource, although not always perfect, it's easier. Providing the training is very important.
Great. And I'm just going to ask a follow-up question on that. How many, when you guys budget your training, your staff training, how are you doing that? Is that part of your position control planning? You're actually planning how many hours per employee, or how do you do it?
Yes, it's part of our budget. And ironically, we are in the midst of doing our budget, and we had that exact same conversation. It's planning when the training will take place, and there's several different types of training. There's culinary training, there's production training, but it is budgeted in our labor and our payroll, and it actually goes into our union contract as part of their work days.
Excellent. Do you utilize time at like professional development days for some of the training?
Yes.
That's in the Minneapolis calendar?
Yes, yes, we do.
Great. All right. Our next question is from Ray. Hey, Ray, how you doing out in Eagle, Colorado? Ray and I want to see it too. I'd love to see a copy of that cycle menu template that Ann showed. It's it's a nice one with the spot for food costs and for the components. Would you guys be willing to share that?
Absolutely. We might have to clean up the formulas, but yeah, we'll share it.
Great.
Yeah, the formulas are specific, you know, to our schools and the different amounts of participation and stuff. But the formulas are something that anybody could, you know, customize.
Right.
Yeah, one thing that's in there, because as we, again, part of procurement that I stressed before is looking at your weighted average. So she can change the weighted average for each meal. That will give us our monthly weighted average cost for the menu.
That's great. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. And then you guys are using NutriKids across your whole system, or as far as your back office and menu planning and all that stuff, or what are you guys doing now in that regard?
So we currently have 3 systems that are not integrated, and we're looking for something new that will have one system that integrates all components. Front of the house is PCS. NutriKid is currently being used for nutrition analysis and recipe and menu planning, and Track now is used at the Nutrition Center for production and ordering and distribution. But none of them really talk to each other, so we're looking forward to one integrated system that we don't have to replicate our efforts.
I bet you are. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a potential nightmare. But these things happen in big systems, so let's see. The next question is, in the very first few years of farm-to-school procurement, what were your biggest challenges? And then they said, for a district just starting out, can you recommend where to focus first to gain traction? Particular example of size of farmer, particular produce item, et cetera.
Okay, so in terms of some of the challenges we had during the beginning, we kind of hit the farm-to-school scene just as wholesale and institutional markets were becoming a thing for some of the small and sustainable local farmers. So we started 4 years ago with farmers who were largely used to CSA farming and farmers markets and smaller direct consumer venues. So at the very beginning, our main challenges were getting products that were in the correct packaging, getting products that were not too dirty, working with our farmers on food safety issues like having chickens right next to the place where you're washing produce. And, you know, those types of issues we've been able to work with farmers on. So now they're a little more advanced in their food safety practices. They're doing larger scale and larger volumes of growing, and that's helped us source more products, but it's also opened doors for those farmers into other markets like Whole Foods or Chipotle, or some of the food distributors that care about the integrity of their produce. So in growing with our farmers, we've opened doors for ourselves and for the institutional marketplace broadly. Where I would recommend beginning is, I would say, use a product that you already have. Let's say you're already using maybe a pre-cooked diced potato and you're just kind of warming and serving it. An easy substitute would be a diced potato that you could roast. Even more simply could be an apple, you know, where you have an apple on your menu and you could look for an apple product. Where it gets more complicated is when you create new recipes for farm-to-school items. Like, let's say you don't have butternut squash on your menu, kids are not familiar with it, your staff doesn't know how to prepare it per se, that gets a little more complicated, and I would bring that in later on in the game. We've found potatoes and other storage crops to be really useful and worthwhile for us here. Our motto for our hot side dishes is chop it up, roast it, and serve it. We do that with potatoes, winter squash, beets, sweet potatoes, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots. Having that sort of simple go-to farm-to-school side dish keeps our volumes up, keeps the kids used to those items, and gosh, they just taste so much better when they're fresh and roasted as opposed to frozen and steamed.
Awesome. We're getting close to almost at 5 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead and answer. I've got about 3 more questions that I think are all good questions that I want to make sure we answer. So we'll run over a couple of minutes if people have want to stay on. This question is, who's providing training to your staff? Do you guys do in-house training? Do you bring in TA? What do you guys do?
A combination of all of the above. There is some value of bringing sometime outside people to do the training, and I refer to it just like a kid. I can tell my kid, I could tell my sons something till I'm blue in the face, but when the neighbor said it, it was better. So we have used the Institute for Child Nutrition, which is able to provide free training to your staff. We have used local culinary instructor. We have used a parent instructor just to bring a third party to the table, but we developed the curriculum and the training, and then most of the culinary training now is done in-house through our chef.
Great. And are all, I'm sure this is a yes, you're using 6 cent verification on all your cycles?
Yes.
I just lost my screen here. Emily or somebody at F3, if you could, somebody else could read off that last question.
Sure thing, Beth.
I lost my screen.
Yep. The question is, from a district that struggles with limited kitchen staff and therefore does very little, close to none, from scratch cooking, it's all processed, preheated products. What are your most popular recipes? Recipes that take little prep that kids like?
God, I'd have to go back. And I'm trying. We're also coming to the realization that the simpler the recipe, the better for our staff and the better for the kids. We're finding that simple ones, such as roasted chicken, roasted potatoes that don't require a lot, work quite well. So salt, pepper, olive oil, and an oven seem to be one of the key ingredients. But we'd be more than happy. I'd have to go back and look at all of them. But again, we're the same thing. We're happy to share recipe or send them to you if you want to upload them on the lunchbox.
And I think what Bertrand was saying earlier about partnering with manufacturers too, you may find that there might be a facility in your area that is baking, for example, that could bake a corn muffin. We just had this experience, and that might meet your needs, and you can work with them on a minimally processed, clean label corn muffin. So partnering with manufacturers may be helpful in your scenario here.
Yeah, that's actually something that districts that we've worked with have done a lot. Like, for example, in Boulder, they wanted to put a tamale on their menu. It's not something that they can buy. That's, you know, they want something that's fresh. They can't make it in-house. And they put out we actually have this RFP up on the lunchbox for their lower volume products that are like that. And they found a great tamale that way. What's that?
Can you send us the tamale over here? We're looking for a tamale.
You're gonna have to go to Denver for a good tamale. But that's how they did that actually out in California. We had somebody it was before they even had a kitchen. They had somebody rolling burritos for breakfast. It's a great way to, you know, partner with a local company. Very often they'll make an effort to come in at a price point that is just awesome and works out. Like Bertrand said, it might not be something that you're going to serve, you know, every week if the price point's too high, but you can still work it into your overall costing if you're doing a weighted average on your costs, so that can work out. We're going to wrap it up here. I want to profusely thank the Minneapolis team for sharing all of your knowledge and taking the time to talk about it and answer questions. It's just been fabulous. This is my absolute favorite topic is procurement. So it just makes me really happy. I want to thank the Lifetime Foundation for sponsoring this webinar series. We wouldn't be able to keep this going without it. And we will get this webinar recording up. There'll be a little probably be a little survey coming your way via email when you close out of the session. And really thank all the participants for taking the time to join us today. And look on the lunchbox for our next webinar. I can't remember what it is at the moment, but we've got a bunch bunch planned, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks again, Bertrand, Andrea, and Ann, so much for your time, and thank you to the CAF staff for keeping the session running so smoothly. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.